In Scotland, the SNP is fighting to hold on to many of its massive 43 seats that it won in Scotland last time. It's had a very tough time and a drop in their support since Nicola Sturgeon quit. Stephen Flynn is the party's leader in the Commons, and he's with us from Aberdeen. Beautiful day there, Stephen Flynn. It's good to have you with us. It's interesting, during the campaign, you sounded like a bit of a different SNP. On Friday's big BBC debates, you didn't talk about independence at all. Have you given up?
Not at all, Laura. And, you know, I trust the nous of the Scottish people to know that the Scottish National Party fully believe in an independent Scotland, and I'm sure all of your viewers already know that. Of course, we are in a general election campaign, and that means we need to focus upon the biggest issues at Westminster, and that's austerity, £18 billion of public sector cuts coming down the line, what the IFS regard as a conspiracy of silence, the consequence of Brexit, and of course the ongoing cost of living crisis which people are facing. We're willing to deal with these issues head on. We're willing to challenge an incoming Labour government on their conspiracy of silence with the Tories on these big issues, and hopefully following the general election we'll be able to put some guts into the House of Commons to deal with these issues in order to improve the outcomes for people in Scotland.
But I don't remember ever seeing an SNP campaign like it, where basically anybody hardly ever mentioned the I word, and your party's policy was to treat this general election as a de facto referendum on independence. So isn't it a bit strange that you're not talking about it proactively, or does it actually tell us that you know it's on the back burner for many millions of voters, and that's why you don't want to highlight it?
Well, of course, that was never an adopted party political position. Our position is very clear. The page 1, line 1 of our manifesto will say a vote for the SNP is a vote for an independent nation. That's what the SNP stand for. That is what we believe in. And of course, if we win the election, it will be for the UK Parliament, it'll be for Keir Starmer, in all likelihood, the next Prime Minister, to then determine whether he will adhere to the democratic wishes of the people of Scotland, or whether he'll simply follow the well-trodden path of Theresa May, of Boris Johnson, of Liz Truss and of Rishi Sunak by denying the democratic will of the people of Scotland. That's very much a question for the Labour Party. I'm fully focused on making sure that we win this election in Scotland, that we put independence in the forefront of people's minds, but we also focus heavily on the cost of living crisis, on the damage being caused by austerity, on the damage being caused by Brexit, and our positive vision to deal with that, to rejoin the European single market, to grow the economy by delivering net zero, to make sure that we have investment in our NHS and we tackle the cost of living crisis by providing people with financial support. That's in stark contrast to what's on offer from the main Westminster establishment parties. The SNP will never cosy up to the establishment in Westminster because we believe in Scotland's future.
But you have been, though, shifting your tone in various different areas. As your polling numbers have been very challenging for you, you have shifted position on various things. You're talking at us from your sunny, beautiful Aberdeen constituency, where North Sea oil and gas supports thousands and thousands of jobs. Now, Nicola Sturgeon used to say she was very sceptical about new licences being granted for more development. But the new First Minister, John Swinney, doesn't take quite that stance. And Kate Forbes, his deputy, has said that new developments could quite possibly go ahead. So you have changed your tune.
Well, what we believe in, Laura, is a just and sustainable transition that protects the future employment of the tens of thousands of people who live behind me. Now, the reality is at this election, there are 3 options on the table. That just and sustainable transition that protects workers and creates the new net zero jobs of tomorrow. There's the Labour Party position, which of course would scrap 100,000 jobs and wouldn't invest in that net zero future because they've rolled back on their £28 billion net zero commitment. And then, of course, there's the Conservative Party position, which is to act like oil and gas will last forever, when it won't. They're almost becoming climate deniers like Nigel Farage. So the option for people in Scotland is very clear.
You criticise Labour's plans for a windfall tax and their overall tax rate on oil and gas profits to 78%. And you say, and you've just repeated it there, that could cost 100,000 jobs. But the SNP has backed a windfall tax of 75%. So why is a 78% windfall tax a complete disaster and a 75% tax rate something that you support?
So there's two answers to that. Firstly, the additional revenue which the Labour Party are seeking to take in will not go into household bills. What it's going to do is flow from Scotland straight into nuclear power projects in England, which is of no benefit to people in Scotland. But secondly, and these aren't my figures, 100,000 jobs, these are independent investment experts. It's what Unite the Union refer to as putting people on the scrap heap. That is what Labour's future offers, is 100,000 job cuts. And I will stand against that because that's not in the interests of Scotland's economy. We need to make sure that we have a just transition which allows us to meet our climate targets. Now, just over my shoulder is a wind farm which Donald Trump, the famous climate activist, opposed. That provides enough energy to power all the homes in Scotland. Just out the back of this building I'm in is the largest floating offshore wind farm in the world. Scotland's future when it comes to renewables is huge, but we need to grasp it. The only way to grasp it is to invest. The Labour Party don't want to invest in that future. They walked away from £28 billion. The SNP want to invest in that future, and that is the difference of this election.
Stephen Flynn, thank you so much indeed for joining us from Aberdeen, looking glorious this morning. And there is a list of all the other candidates standing in Aberdeen South, his constituency.